What I'm going to cover today is how I went from 30% body fat all the way down to 10% and how you can too. I think one of the first things we do need to cover is going from 30% body fat all the way down to 10 is no easy feat. It's not something that you're going to be able to turn around in 2 months. It does take a lot of lifestyle changes and it's not as simple as just dieting till the scale goes down. Altering your diet is absolutely key. Some guidelines that I would probably give out is you don't need to follow any kind of fad diets. You don't need to keto, carnivore, vegan, whatever. It's just calories in versus calories out. You need to expend more calories than what you're taking in. To begin with, it does very much come down to moving more and eating less. And that kind of guideline alone will work for most people. But if you're wanting to go from 30% down to 10%, you need to be making sure that you're hitting your protein count, roughly a gram of protein per pound of body weight, tracking your calories so that you can see what you're taking in and what you're putting out so that you can make the equation that works in your favour. The next kind of tip that I would give diet wise is that you need to make simple, repeatable meals. It is totally possible to get to 10% body fat doing if it fits your macros, just kind of going about your life and trying to work out all these different meals that can help you get there. But the biggest thing I find is for most people, tracking their calories, coming up with maybe 3 to 5 different meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is going to serve them way better than varying your diet all over the place. You can do it, but it's a lot harder. Changing body fat percentage isn't as simple as just watching the scale go down. I made that mistake when I first got into. I was overweight, and I thought, underneath this, I'll have like a good physique. And I dieted down, and I got to a very unhealthy weight of 45 kilos. That's extremely underweight, and I still looked fat. And it was because I hadn't actually changed any of the kind of proportionality of my kind of stubborn fat areas. I still had fat around the lower chest. I still had fat around the lower back. The only difference now was I had arms like twigs. So I actually kind of set myself back with that approach, and I actually would doubt that I had reduced my body fat percentage by that much. What I should have been doing, and what I later realised, was I needed to be lifting weights. I needed to be progressively overloading. Even if you're someone that lifts already and you've clicked on this video, I would recommend that you do need to get to kind of 10% body fat and to get to kind of the appearance that you want to get to. I would recommend training between 3 and 5 days a week and making sure that you're lifting weights on each of those days. As for cardio, I think that cardio can be used as and when required. It's not something that's like a hard and fast rule that you need to do to get there. But sometimes it can help with reinforcing a deficit. Now, something that you also want to do when you're training is kind of reach for progressive overload. Try and train a little bit harder than last time. This might be quite difficult for you because if you're at a certain level already of advancement when you've been training and you go on a calorie deficit, you go on a cut, gaining muscle is kind of, for some people, depending where they are, is kind of nigh on impossible. But I think that even reaching for progressive overload, trying to train harder than last time in the gym, even when you're on a cut, kind of does guarantee a little bit more muscle retention. That's a little bit kind of bro science because it's not, there's no paper or whatever that says that. A lot of people do talk about when they are in a calorie deficit, they actually kind of take back their training intensity. But I think that most people tend to undershoot their effort level in the gym anyway. So kind of just attempting for progressive overload might get you there. And also, if you've not been eating enough protein, maybe your diet's not been very clean, maybe you've just been eating what mum makes you, that actually gives you a little bit of play in the joints. That if you clean up your diet, you're starting to get a gram of protein per pound of body weight in. You might actually give yourself just that enough recovery, enough protein that you could potentially see some extra results. That isn't obviously guaranteed, it does depend, but I think that your safe bet is going in the gym, training hard, getting your protein. Lifestyle is actually one of the biggest things you can do, and incorporating kind of habits and attitudes that get you to 10% body fat in your daily life. One of the biggest things you can do is make sure that you're getting minimum 8,000 steps a day, maybe anywhere up to even like 15,000 steps a day. When I was on my cut, when I was obviously starting out, 30% body fat, making my way down to 10%, I was maybe like 4 weeks out from my kind of target date, and I was kind of looking at myself and I was like, I'm behind. I looked maybe 4 weeks into a diet, and I was actually meant to be 4 weeks away from my final result, and that entire time I hadn't been adding in any extra steps. I was doing like 4,000 steps a day or something daft, and I went, right, okay, I'm going to do 15,000 steps a day for the last 4 weeks. And just by doing that, it accelerated my progress so much. It was something that had just been like sitting that I just hadn't been reaching out for. It was an opportunity for me to see more change without having to manipulate my diet. You also want to make sure that you're starting to kind of get up in the morning at the same time and going to bed at the same time. This is going to really make your recovery consistent. One of the last things you want to do when you're trying to get to 10% body fat is, one night stay up to 3 in the morning, the next night go to bed at 10 p.m. Give yourself adequate time to sleep and make it repeatable so you're getting good quality sleep. This is going to be really conducive to you keeping the muscle that you've got and recovering so that you can still push yourself in the gym. One of the next things is kind of building systems in your life. And what I mean by this is making sure that you do the things that you need to do. So one of the easiest things that I find that many people get wrong is just skipping their sessions. I know so many people that are on a diet, they're training, and I don't know, things get a little bit hectic at work and they start skipping sessions. One of the biggest things that I can say to you is don't go home. Don't go home from your work or your university or whatever you're doing, and then say, oh, I'll quickly jump in the house and go back out to train. Don't do that, because as soon as you're in the house, then you're a little bit hungry, then you're going to get dinner, and then you've got to wash up the dishes, and then all of a sudden you find yourself and it's like time to go to bed and you didn't train. What you need to do is get that gym kit in your bag with you, bring it to work. After you go to work, don't go home, go straight to the gym. That is going to build things in your life that make you get there. One of the things I used to say to myself after a day at college, make myself go to the gym, was I don't have to go to the gym. I just have to go to the coffee shop across from the gym, and I don't get to go home. I have to go there first, and I get to give myself a wee coffee. So I went, go to the coffee shop, get my black coffee, drinking my black coffee, and the gym's just across the road, and I can see the gym, and I've got my gym kit in my bag, and I'm already here now. So I say to myself, oh well, I guess I just have to go into the gym. And I go across the road and I go into the gym, and I'm like, well, I'm already here, I might as well do my workout. You have to make going to the gym and dieting and all these kind of things, getting your step count, you have to make these the most convenient thing that you can do. That first phase of 30 to 20 actually passes fairly quickly. It's quite easy to do. Because you're not taking on all the habits you need to, and you suddenly introduce these habits, it just makes a massive difference. You probably won't feel too tired, and you'll probably feel a lot better for it, to be honest. Phases 20 to 15 is, again, you just need to be a little bit more dialed in. There's less that you can get away with, but it isn't too hard. You'll probably feel quite good. You'll probably still have a lot of energy. You might even still be making progress in the gym. Phase 3, that 15% to 10%, that's, I think, when you start to kind of run into the hardest part. There's a much smaller window for error You can't really mess things up. You have to be absolutely dialed in. Getting from the 30 to the 15% body fat, for a lot of people, is kind of a walk in the park. It's the 15 to the 10%. It's because 15% body fat for a man is kind of what we consider like the kind of healthiest, the kind of best of both worlds. You're the leanest you can be without suffering in any kind of hormonal energy levels kind of way. But that 15 to 10%, that's hard. And for most people, 15% is enough. But if you've clicked on this video, you probably do want to know how to get that last little bit. This is where you have to be at the upper ranges of, I feel, everything. For that step count, for instance, you probably shouldn't be doing 8,000 steps a day. You definitely want to be a lot more into that 15,000 steps a day. Do you want to be training 3 days a week? Maybe you want to be kind of leaning more towards 5 days a week. Now, all these things I've said, you can do it without doing that, but it just becomes harder. So everything needs to be dialed in, because your energy levels, your motivation from this stage, from 15 to 10%, is going to be a lot lower, and things are going to move a lot slower too. You might find that, the first 50%, you get from 30% to 15, and then the last 50% is you just getting from 15 to 10. So I'm going to try and kind of summarise this in a quick fire way. 1, getting from 30% to 10% is not easy, and for many people isn't really something that they need to do. For most people, again, like I say, 15% is enough. You don't need to jump in with a fad diet or a massive deficit. Slowly introducing a deficit and basically monitoring the scale, weighing yourself every week. Did you go down this week? How much did you go down by? And just adjusting your calories kind of as and when you need to is a much better approach than just hitting a hard deficit and kind of jumping in with both feet really early on. You've probably got to track your calories. For most people, tracking their calories, having an understanding of what's going in and what's going out, is just going to be much more useful than kind of guesstimating. You should make meals that are simple and quite easy to make for you, so that they can become repeatable and just help with your adherence to your diet. Lifting weights is non-negotiable. You have to be in the gym probably 3 to 5 days a week, and you need to be kind of progressive overloading on compound lifts. Cardio can be a useful tool. You don't necessarily need to do it, but you can add it when needed, just to kind of kickstart and give you a little bit more of a deficit if that's something that's required. Step count can make a massive difference to your deficit. It's definitely a tool that can be used and leveraged to get you where you want to be. If you found yourself stagnating on the same weight for the last 2 weeks or something, adding in a greater step count every day, you're almost guaranteed to see that scale start to move down again. Prioritise your sleep like you prioritise your training. Make it consistent. Make yourself go to bed kind of at the same time and try to wake up at the same time, so that you can have a really good recovery schedule. Don't just rely on motivation. You're going to have to create systems in your life that allows you to be disciplined. It gets harder as you go. It does start off easy, then it becomes like a little bit more difficult, and towards the end you need to be extremely precise, and you have to really want it. If you're serious about doing it, it's not just a diet, it is a complete lifestyle shift to get you there. But like I said, for most people, just those first 2 phases, just getting themselves to 15%, will be enough. But say for instance, you are going on holiday or something, you're going to be on the beach for a couple of weeks, 10% isn't sustainable, but it is something that you can do for a shoot or a holiday, or whatever reason that you might need to get to 10%. You can definitely get there by following this guideline. But just remember, don't take it too far. For most people, you will look just as good at a slightly higher body fat percentage, and you'll be a lot healthier and you'll feel a lot better for it. Something that's maybe a bit more kind of controversial to say, but does need to be said, is that a lot of people think that you can do this and never feel hungry. Even if you are volume eating and you're getting in lots of fibre and protein and kind of really make sure that your belly stays full. Especially towards the end part, you will feel hungry. There will be a little bit of hunger there because your body knows what you're doing. It knows that it's losing body fat and it doesn't really want to do that. So once you find yourself going into those kind of lower body fat percentages, you will receive pushback, and that's totally normal. And one of the biggest things I can really say to you is, unfortunately, it's part and parcel of it. And for me, a lot of it was just waiting to the next meal. So that was my guide on how I got from 30% down to 10% body fat. Let me know down below in the comments, was there anything I missed? Is there anything that you disagree with? If you enjoyed the video, please like the video. If you're interested in this type of content, subscribe, click the bell notification so you can stay up to date on the latest ones.